Okay, we're now going to do part 2 of our test 3 review videos. This is just going to be on the part about midrashim that we discussed. It should be a lot shorter than the other video. As we've mentioned many times in class, a midrash is not a story. That's why I put up a circle and a line through it over the word story. A midrash is not a story. Very often midrashim will contain stories, but in fact the word midrash, the word darash, which we've used, the shoresh, which we've used a bunch of times, daled, re, shin, like the word darsheni, means to explain. The point of a midrash is to explain the psukim, to give an interpretation of what's going on in the psukim, and very often that interpretation takes the form of a story, which may or may not have actually happened. Sometimes these stories clearly did not happen, but the point is not just to tell a story, the point is to use a story that helps explain something in the psukim. Very often this story is meant to teach us a lesson as well. And as we discussed in class, there are basically 3 steps to approaching a midrash. You have to ask yourself, the part of the pasuk that the midrash is discussing, is there a problem in that pasuk? Is there an extra word? Is there some information missing? What is it what problem might this midrash be addressing? Secondly, how does it solve the problem? The midrash should help solve the problem in the pasuk that you pointed out, that it's talking about. And then third, is there a lesson from the midrash? Can the story be used to teach us something about living a Jewish life, about God, about people, about Jewish philosophy, etc., etc. So again, these are the 3 things you always want to do, not always, but for the most part want to do when approaching a midrash. 1 and 2 for sure. Sometimes you'll be able to find a lesson, sometimes it'll be a little more difficult. So let's first take a look at the first example that we saw. Or it's really the second example, the example that we saw in our psukim. Our psukim that we saw midrash on discussed the man, particularly the taste of the man. If you look in Bamidbar, which is what we're learning right now, the pasuk says, "V'hayat tamok etal l'shara shemen." The taste of it was the taste of cake baked with oil. Yet in Shemot it says the following: "V'tamok etzab b'devash." It tasted like wafers made with honey. So right away you're seeing there's a problem in the psukim here. Right? There's an inconsistency. Here it says that it tasted like a cake baked with oil. Here it's like wafers made with honey. Which one is it? That's a problem, and maybe we can use a midrash to solve that problem. So the midrash that we saw said the following: it is written bread, which is actually in the third pasuk, but it is also written oil, and it is also written honey. How is that possible? Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina said, bread for the youths, oil for the aged, and honey for the infants. Again, this is normally in Hebrew, this is the translation. What is this telling us? That actually the man had 3 different flavors, and depending how old you were, it tasted differently. If you were a child, it would taste like bread. If you were old, it would taste like oil. And if you were a baby, it would taste like honey. So again, if you look at this midrash first, you'll say, what the heck is this talking about? Where are they getting this from, that there's 3 different flavors? But the answer is because there's a problem in the psukim. The problem in the psukim is that there are 3 different psukim that discuss the flavor of the man. One says bread, one says oil, and one says honey. So how are you going to solve that problem? So this midrash solves that problem very nicely by saying, depending on how old you were, it tasted differently. Is that necessarily true? It may not have been true. But the point of the midrash is but the midrash does solve a problem, and now we can learn a lesson from it. What's the lesson we can learn? So one lesson we can learn is that God always has the ability to provide for people, no matter how old they are, because God understands their needs. So it was bread for the youth, oil for the aged, and honey for the infants, because people of different ages have different needs. And man, which was God's bread, God has the ability to provide for all ages. So again, we have a problem. Why are there different flavors, tastes mentioned in the psukim? We have a solution because it tasted like something different no matter how old you were, and each pasuk is for a different age. And then we had a lesson from that God knows how to provide for all different types of people. The second example of a midrash that we saw, this is actually the first midrash that we saw, then we looked at the midrash of the Mom. It doesn't really matter. Another example that we saw was talking about saddling a donkey in particularly, let's ignore the first pasuk now. Let's look at the second pasuk. Vayikach Moshe ishto ve'banav. Moshe took his wife and his sons. Vayarkivem al hachamor, and he mounted them. He put them on the donkey. Now, when it says hachamor, the in Tanakh, that generally means there's a very specific donkey we're referring to. Now that is actually, you might not notice right away, that actually would be a problem in the pasuk. Because the pasuk should say, like here, his donkey, or a donkey. Why does it say the donkey? The donkey is a problem that requires a solution. It's something that's out of the ordinary, that it should say hachamor, the donkey. So now we have our problem. Now how are we going to solve this problem? So we have a midrash that solves this problem. Rashi quotes this midrash in Shemot. Mount them upon the donkey, the specific donkey. Which one? This is the donkey that Abraham saddled for sacrificing Yitzchak, and this is the one upon whom Mashiach will appear in the future. Okay, so somehow the midrash makes up this infinite donkey, this donkey that will live forever. What's the word I'm looking for? Live forever is, I can't even think of the word. Anyways, an invulnerable donkey. There's another word for it. I just can't think of it. Anyways, a donkey that's going to live forever, and that would solve the problem, because if there is a very specific donkey in the Torah, and that would mean the donkey that was used in other places, the donkey that Abraham used for Akedah Yitzchak, and the donkey that Mashiach is going to appear upon, then it would make sense why it says Hachamor. Moshe placed them on the donkey, because there actually is a very specific donkey, this special donkey. Now, is there really this donkey that's going to live forever, and it's going to be there from the time of Abraham till the time of Mashiach, and Mashiach will ride upon this donkey? There's a very good chance that that's not actually true. But this midrash does solve the problem. If it were true, it would solve the problem. Say, hey, there's a specific donkey. And it does teach us something. What does that teach us? That there's Akedah Yitzchak, there is Moshe coming to Mitzrayim, and then there's Mashiach appearing to the future. And the idea that it's teaching us, the lesson here, is that different types of redemptions in this case, or different types of redemptions in this case, Abraham, riding with Yitzchak and then eventually not killing Yitzchak, and then the redemption of people from Egypt, Jews from Egypt, and Mashiach are all somehow connected. Again, how are we connected? That we didn't really discuss. But again, the point here was not to come up with the lesson, but the point was we're just trying to point out that the midrash does teach us something. So again, what's the problem? Why does it say the donkey? Midrash solves that problem by saying there's a special donkey, tells us what the special donkey is, and the idea is that these events, Akedah Yitzchak, Moshe going to Mitzrayim, and Mashiach are all somehow connected. So just so you know, on the test, what you're going to have to know is, A, what a midrash means. That is explaining a pasuk, sometimes through a story, but you don't have to know the story part. It's just a way of explaining the pasuk. You have to know the 3 steps to addressing a midrash, to dealing with a midrash, to explaining a midrash, and that is, what's the problem the midrash is dealing with, how does the midrash solve it, and what's the lesson? And then I'm going to ask you at least to explain either the man or the donkey midrash, each of these 3 steps.